Virgo, they want to come back. Sit with that for a second before anything else, before the catch, before the conditions and the complications and all the things that make this situation more textured than a simple return. Just let the first part land in whatever way it needs to land in you. They want to come back. Something changed in them, or enough things accumulated that the weight of the change finally exceeded the weight of whatever kept them away. And now there is a conversation coming, one they are building toward with the specific, deliberate pace of someone who knows that what they are about to say is significant and is not going to rush the saying of it into a form that does not do justice to the significance. But there is always a but when the thing being offered is not as simple as it first sounds. And this one is a real but, not a small print but, not a technicality. A genuine substantive requires your honest consideration condition that is embedded in the return they are proposing. That changes the nature of what is being offered from a simple come back to something that requires you to make a real decision about something you have not yet been asked to decide. I am going to walk you through all of it, the return and the catch and the conversation and the decision that is actually sitting inside what is being proposed. You deserve the complete picture before the conversation arrives. Let me start with the separation itself, not to relitigate it, not to assign responsibility or examine who did what with the kind of prosecutorial precision that ultimately serves no one once enough time has passed, but to speak to what the separation was, what it actually was in its true nature, as opposed to the version of it that has perhaps been the operating story in the time since it happened. The separation was not a conclusion. That is what I feel clearly when I sit with the energy of this situation. There is a quality to how this connection exists in the energetic landscape of your life that does not have the texture of something finished. Finished things have a specific energy, a completeness, a silence, a sense that the story has reached its natural endpoint, and what remains is simply the carrying of the memory. This does not have that energy. This has the energy of something interrupted, of a conversation that was put down before it ended, of a cord left hanging in the air unresolved, making the silence that followed it not quiet but tense with everything that was not said. The separation happened for reasons that were real at the time, real enough to produce the distance, real enough to sustain it for however long it has been sustained, but the reasons were not the full story. They were the part of the story that was available to both of you at the moment when the moment required a decision. The full story is what the coming conversation is about. Now, the catch, because you need to understand it before you understand the return, not after, and I am going to name it clearly rather than building to it with the kind of dramatic withholding that serves no one. They want to come back on different terms, not dramatically different, not terms that are unrecognizable from what existed before, but different in one specific, significant way that changes the architecture of what the connection would look like if you said yes. A condition they are bringing to the conversation that was not part of the original structure between you. Something they have decided they need, or that they have decided they cannot return without, that requires you to adjust something about how the connection functions. For some of you, that condition is pace. They want to rebuild slowly, more slowly than the original connection was built, more slowly perhaps than you naturally move when you are invested in something, because the distance has taught them something about what happens when things move faster than the foundation beneath them can support. They are proposing something more deliberate, more structured, less driven by the momentum of feeling and more guided by the intentional building of something that can hold what the feeling generates. For others, the condition is space. Not the complete withdrawal of presence, but the negotiation of an amount of individual space within the connection that was not previously established. Something they have identified in the time of the separation as something they were not able to ask for before, and that they now understand they cannot function without. They are asking for this not to create distance, but to create the conditions under which they can actually be present when they are present. And for others, still, the condition is honesty about something specific, a conversation that needs to happen before the return can begin, something they have been carrying that was never said, something about their own behavior or their own feeling or the truth of something that happened that has not yet been spoken between you. The catch in this version is that the return requires truth telling that will be uncomfortable before it can be clarifying. All three are the same catch in different clothes. They are saying, I want to come back, and I know what I need this time in order to stay. All three are the same catch in different clothes. They are saying, I want to come back, and I know what I need this time in order to stay. And what that sentence contains, what is packed into the second half of it, is the thing worth examining carefully before the conversation happens. Because knowing what you need in order to stay is not the same as being ready to stay. It is not a guarantee that the staying will succeed even with the condition met. It is not proof that the work has been done on the things that produce the separation in the first place. It is, at its most honest, a person who has been in the absence of something long enough to understand what they need differently, offering that understanding as an opening bid on a return. Whether the understanding is accompanied by actual change is what the conversation will begin to reveal. Not confirm, begin to reveal. Because real change is not visible in a single conversation. It is visible over time in the consistency of behavior against the pressure of ordinary circumstance, in the moments when the old pattern would have reemerged and did not. A conversation can offer intention. Time confirms whether intention became reality. You are not being asked to decide whether they have changed. You are being asked to decide whether you want to find out. Those are different decisions. Let me speak to what happened to them in the separation, not to produce sympathy before you have been given space to have whatever feeling you have about what is being proposed, but because what they went through is relevant to what they are bringing, and what they are bringing is what you are about to be asked to respond to. They did not handle the separation with the graceful processing and orderly arrival at clarity that people sometimes present in retrospect to make the messy business of being without someone look more intentional than it was. It was messy. There was a period of relief that turned out to be shorter than expected and gave way to something less comfortable. There were attempts to redirect the energy and the attention that the connection had been occupying toward other things that were theoretically available to receive it. There were some of those attempts that almost worked. that produced enough of what they were reaching for that they could, for a stretch, believe that the direction they had moved in was the right one. And then something happened. I do not know what specifically, and the specifics are yours to discover in the conversation when it comes, but something happened that collapsed the almost working. That made the substitutes insufficient in a way that could not be re-argued, that confronted them with the specific, irreducible, cannot be adequately replaced quality of what existed with you that they had been attempting to find elsewhere or build fresh or simply learn to live without. They could not live without it. That discovery is what produced the decision to reach. They could not live without it. That discovery is what produced the decision to reach. I want to speak to something about you in the separation, because this reading is not only about what happened to them. What happened to you matters too. What you became in the time they were away is relevant to what is being proposed and what you will be receiving it as. You changed, not in the direction of becoming someone harder or more closed or less capable of the specific quality of openness that the connection originally required, but in the direction of becoming someone who knows themselves better, who has a clearer picture of what they need and what they will not accept, and what the difference feels like between the two from the inside, who has built through the separation a kind of interior authority about their own experience that was less developed before. That authority is what is going to be in the room when the conversation happens. And the person returning is going to encounter it immediately, is going to feel the difference between the you of before and the you of now in a way that changes the dynamic of the conversation before a word is spoken. Because the you of now does not need the return in the same way the you of before might have, does not have the same specific gravity toward them that made certain things easier to overlook than to address. The return, if it happens, is going to happen between two different people than the ones who created the separation. That is not a warning. That is the best possible news, because what they created with the you of before was not strong enough to hold. What might be built with the you of now has a different foundation. Here is the thing about the catch that I want you to understand before you decide how to receive it. The catch is not a trap. I say this because I feel something in your energy that is cautious in the specific way of someone who has been asked to adjust before for the benefit of a connection and has found that the adjustment produced compliance rather than genuine change on the other end, who has experience with conditions that functioned as control rather than as legitimate need, whose protective instincts around anything that sounds like I want to come back, but you need to change something, have been trained through experience to be vigilant. That vigilance is earned and it is appropriate. But I want you to look at this catch specifically, not at catches in general, not through the lens of previous experiences of similar sounding proposals, at this one, because what I feel in the energy of what is being brought to you is not the catch of someone trying to position themselves advantageously. It is the catch of someone who has learned something and is being honest about what they learned. There is a difference between a condition that serves the person proposing it at your expense, and a condition that serves the connection itself. The first is manipulation wearing the costume of communication. The second is actually communication. What is coming is actually communication. Imperfect, possibly delivered with more fumbling than precision, probably accompanied by feelings that make the delivery less clean than the content deserves, but genuine. Your discernment will know the difference when the words are in the room. Trust your discernment more than you trust my description of what is coming. You are better at reading the specific person in front of you than any reading can be. Let me speak to the conversation itself, not what is said in it that belongs to the two of you and the specific landscape of what exists between you, but the quality of it, the texture of being in it. It is going to feel different from conversations you have had before with this person. Not different in the way of being unfamiliar or strange. Different in the way of someone showing up with their armor less complete than you are accustomed to seeing it. Different in the way of something being available in them that was not available before. A specific quality of willingness to be seen in their uncertainty, to say things they are not entirely sure how to say, to be in the conversation without knowing where it is going to land before it lands. You have wanted that from them. Maybe not this specific conversation, maybe not under these specific circumstances, but the quality of presence they are going to bring, the more vulnerable, less managed, actually trying quality is something you have registered the absence of and something you have perhaps stopped expecting. Do not let the unexpectedness of it make it harder to receive. What do you actually want? Not what you think you should want, not what the protective part of you insists is the safe choice, not what the part that remembers the difficult things about this connection reaches for automatically, not what the version of you that has spent the separation building a life that works without this person in it is currently most invested in maintaining. What do you actually want? I am not asking you to answer that here. I am not asking you to answer it before the conversation arrives. I am asking you to know, to locate it in yourself, honestly, below the layers of self-protection and reasonable caution and the very understandable reluctance to want something that previously contributed to pain, so that when the conversation happens, you are responding from your actual truth rather than from the managed version of it. Because the catch works both ways. They are coming to you with a condition, and underneath your response to that condition is a condition of your own, something you would need, something without which a yes from you would be a yes that costs you more than it costs the connection to sustain. Something you perhaps have not fully named yet because naming it required knowing that the conversation was coming, and until now you did not know. Now you know. Use the time between now and the conversation to find the thing you need, not to weaponize it, not to meet their condition with a counteroffer framed as leverage, but to know it clearly enough that when you are in the room with this person and the conversation is happening, you do not say yes to what they are asking without also saying what you need in return. A real return requires both. Something else is present in this reading that I have been circling and want to name directly. Fear on both sides. Theirs, which is driving the specific way they're going to approach this conversation, cautious, slightly overprepared, probably rehearsing what they want to say in the private space of their own thoughts in a way that will make the actual conversation feel slightly more formal than the feeling behind it and yours. The specific fear that sits in someone who has been hurt by a thing and is now being asked to consider returning to proximity with the thing that hurt them. The fear is rational, it has evidence. It is not the product of excessive caution or a damaged capacity for trust or anything pathological. It is the appropriate, intelligent, protective response of someone who has experienced something and remembered it. And it does not have to make the decision for you. Fear is information, not instruction. It tells you to be careful, to be clear, to know what you need before you commit to anything, to watch for the specific patterns that cost you before. It does not tell you to say no. It tells you to say yes carefully if yes is what you arrive at, or to say no clearly if no is the honest answer, with the specificity of someone who knows exactly why. The conversation is not a trap either way. If you say yes, you are not promising you will not change your mind if what is offered turns out to be different from what was proposed. If you say no, you are not closing a door that cannot be reopened at a later time if something changes. The conversation is not a contract, it is an opening. Walk into it as what it is, an opening. The last thing I want to say before this reading closes is something about timing. You did not choose this timing. The return was not scheduled around your readiness or your convenience or the particular moment in your own processing when it would have been most comfortable to receive it. It arrived when it arrived, which is the way things that are not in our control tend to arrive indifferent to our calendar, responsive only to the internal timeline of the person doing the arriving. And yet, the timing is not random. It never is. Something in you has also been in motion, even if that motion has been invisible from where you have been standing. Something in the work you have been doing on yourself, on understanding what you need, on building the specific kind of clarity about your own worth and your own requirements that this moment is now going to call on, has been building toward a readiness that you may not have identified as readiness because it did not feel like arrival. It felt like ordinary days. Those ordinary days were preparation. You are more ready for this conversation than you currently believe. Not ready in the sense of having no feelings about it, not ready in the sense of being unaffected or invulnerable or fully armored against whatever it brings up. Ready in the sense of having what you need to be honest in it, to receive what is offered and respond to it from your actual truth, to know the difference between what you want and what you fear, and to let that knowledge guide what you say. The conversation is coming. You are ready, not in spite of everything the separation was, because of it.